I had been working at Henderson Tech for 15 years. 15 years of cleaning floors, emptying trash, scrubbing bathrooms, and keeping the building spotless, invisible, unnoticed, but always present. That's what I liked. Quiet, safe, predictable. That morning started like any other. I clocked in, grabbed my mop, and moved through the hallways, the fluorescent lights flickering above me. The hum of the office was familiar, almost comforting, printers clicking, phones buzzing, the distant chatter of employees who never looked my way. And then I saw him, Mr. Carlyle, the CEO, white, imposing, always polished like he'd just stepped out of a magazine. His office door was open, sunlight streaming in, and for a moment I froze. His eyes landed on me sharp, calculating, dismissive, and in that instant I knew something was about to happen. "James," he said. His voice cut through the hum of the office like a knife. "Step into my office." Now, my heart slammed against my chest. 15 years of loyalty gone in a single command. I swallowed hard and obeyed, each step toward his office heavier than the last, each heartbeat a drum of impending humiliation. A few employees glanced up from their desks. I tried to ignore them, but I could feel their eyes, the quiet curiosity, the unspoken judgment. My uniform, blue shirt, navy pants, worn but clean, made me stand out only because I wasn't supposed to be noticed. And now I was. "Do you realize how many mistakes you've made this quarter?" he said, voice cold and deliberate. "I don't pay you to think, I pay you to follow orders, and yet you fail." I opened my mouth. "Sir, I don't speak," he snapped, cutting me off. "In front of everyone, you're an embarrassment, right here, right now." He gestured vaguely toward the office floor. "You're fired." It hit me like a punch to the gut. 15 years of work, loyalty, and quiet dignity erased in a word. My knees weakened, my throat tightened. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. "Grab your things," he continued. "Security will escort you out." I moved mechanically, numb, humiliated, aware that everyone who had glanced up before was now staring. Whispers floated behind me, conversations paused, the rhythm of the office grinding to a halt as if the entire building had collectively realized what was happening. The officers met me at the door, broad, authoritative, practiced in making people feel small. "Sir, please come with us," one said. I nodded. My hands trembled, my dignity stretched thin like a fragile thread. As I was led through the hallways, past familiar faces, I felt the weight of humiliation press down on me. Every step, every glance, every muffled chuckle reminded me of my invisibility, now amplified by exposure. And then it happened. A phone camera clicked. Someone had begun recording. A whisper traveled along the line of observers. Eyes widened. Murmurs spread like wildfire. "Is he really firing him?" I didn't know who it was. I didn't care yet. But a seed of hope planted itself deep inside me. Someone was watching. Someone was seeing the truth. When the van doors closed behind me and the fluorescent hum of the office gave way to the stark, mechanical interior of the security vehicle, I realized something I hadn't felt all day. Fear, humiliation, anger, but also a faint glimmer of power because truth, when witnessed, has a way of refusing to stay hidden. 15 years of quiet work, of invisible effort, of overlooked loyalty had led to this moment of ultimate exposure. But somewhere beyond the cameras, beyond the whispers, beyond the concrete walls, I knew the story was far from over, because injustice once seen can never be unseen, and sometimes the very moment meant to destroy you becomes the first step toward your ultimate vindication. The van ride was quiet, but my thoughts were deafening. 15 years of loyalty, diligence, and quiet service reduced to a word: fired. My hands gripped the edge of the seat, knuckles white, my mind racing through every hallway I had walked, every desk I had cleaned, every invisible contribution I had made. And now all of it was erased publicly, humiliatingly, and without explanation. The city moved on outside the window, cars honked, pedestrians passed. Life continued as if nothing had happened, but for me the world had stopped. The streets, the buildings, the sky all felt suffocatingly loud in contrast to the silence that had settled over me. When the van stopped and the officers opened the doors, I realized the crowd outside had grown. People paused, phones raised, whispers ricocheting through the plaza. Someone was filming, someone was witnessing the injustice in real time. My chest tightened. Fear mingled with a strange flicker of hope. Inside the HR office, the air smelled of polish and corporate authority. The walls were lined with framed certificates, awards for leadership and innovation, symbols of a world I had maintained from the shadows. The HR manager, a woman with eyes like steel, gestured to a chair. "Sit," she said, her tone polite but void of empathy. I did as instructed, my legs trembling, my dignity already hanging by a thread. "You've been terminated for repeated violations and insubordination," she began, flipping through a folder like I was just another file in a cabinet of disposable employees. I don't understand," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I've done my job for 15 years. I've never enough," she interrupted. "You'll have the opportunity to appeal, but for now you need to collect your personal items and leave." Every word cut like a blade. 15 years of silent dedication reduced to this moment of public erasure. I felt my face burn, my hands shake, and my body shrink under the weight of humiliation. Then a murmur from the office corridor caught my attention. A colleague, someone who had worked alongside me quietly, whispered under their breath, "They're filming, someone's recording this." The words struck me harder than the firing itself. My humiliation was no longer private. It was being documented, witnessed, broadcast, and immortalized in the hands of someone brave enough to capture the truth. The officers grew tense. Their control, so absolute just minutes ago, was slipping. The camera, the witnesses, the crowd outside, they had shifted the balance. I collected my belongings, my hands trembling, and as I stepped toward the door, I felt the stirrings of a realization. My story was no longer mine alone. It belonged to everyone who saw it. Outside, the sunlight was harsh and exposing. Phones pointed at me, cameras clicked, people whispered, and then someone shouted, "Wait, he didn't do anything wrong." The officers hesitated, confusion flickering across their faces. Carlyle, the CEO, appeared at the office window watching. His authoritative posture faltered, his confidence beginning to crack. And in that moment, I understood something profound. The humiliation I had endured, every cruel word, every dismissive glance, every sneer, was no longer mine to carry alone. The truth, once witnessed, cannot be hidden. 15 years of invisible labor had led to this one pivotal moment. And though I didn't yet know how, I felt the spark of something I hadn't dared hope for: reversal, justice, recognition, because someone had seen me. And once the world sees injustice, it has a way of refusing to stay silent. The van pulled up to the loading dock, and I stepped out into sunlight that felt too bright, too exposing. Every step I took toward the entrance felt heavier than the last. The officers flanked me, their presence a constant reminder of authority, control, and the humiliation that had begun in the CEO's office. But then I noticed something I hadn't expected: eyes, phones, cameras. A few employees had paused their work, craned their necks, and were pointing their devices at me. Whispers floated through the crowd. "Is he really firing him like this?" "I can't believe it." My stomach twisted. My humiliation had moved from private to public, and yet with it a strange spark of hope emerged. Someone was seeing the truth, my fear, my dignity stripped bare, my helplessness, and it was being witnessed. Inside the office building, the HR manager handed me a small box with my personal items. Each object, a worn notebook, a set of keys, a simple pen, felt heavier than it should. They weren't just belongings, they were the fragments of 15 years of invisible work, care, and loyalty. And now they were being returned to me like a fragile token of my erasure. The officers moved aside, signaling that I could leave. But the crowd outside had grown. More phones were raised, more whispers floated, and a few voices dared to speak. "This is wrong. Why is he being treated like this?" "Someone stop this!" I froze. The officers exchanged glances, their confidence slipping. The CEO, Carlyle, appeared again at his office window, and for the first time all day he looked uneasy. His authority, which had seemed absolute, now wavered under the scrutiny of witnesses and cameras. The PA system crackled to life, startling me. A calm, deliberate voice spoke, amplified across the lobby. "May I have your attention, please?" Every eye turned toward the source of the announcement. My heart raced. My name was about to be called. "James Harris," the voice continued, "has served this company for 15 years. Every day he has worked quietly, diligently, and with integrity. His labor has ensured this building runs smoothly, and yet today he was publicly humiliated and fired in front of employees and guests." My breath caught in my throat. The words were mine, my truth being spoken aloud. 15 years of invisible work recognized finally in front of everyone who had ever ignored it. The crowd murmured, phones clicked, eyes widened, the officers stiffened, and Carlyle, the CEO, froze at the window, his jaw tightened, his posture rigid. He had assumed control, but now he was powerless. I felt my chest rise with a strange warmth. Humiliation had not vanished, but it had transformed. The narrative that had once been controlled by him by authority and cruelty was now slipping out of his grasp. Employees began to step forward one by one, some shaking their heads, others whispering apologies. They had seen me humiliated, yes, but now they were witnessing something more profound, the truth, and in that truth I found strength, because power, as I was learning, is fragile. And when the world witnesses injustice, even the most imposing figure can falter. I picked up my belongings, took a steadying breath, and for the first time that day I stood taller than I had in hours. The humiliation had begun to shift, the public had seen it, and in doing so it had begun to reverse. I didn't know how far this moment would reach or how completely it would turn the tables. But one thing was certain, the story of my humiliation was no longer mine alone. The world was watching, and that meant nothing, not even the CEO, could stop what was coming next. The sunlight pouring into the lobby felt like a spotlight, exposing every trembling step I took. The box of my belongings weighed heavily in my hands, not because of what it contained, but because of what it symbolized. 15 years of dedication, now reduced to a few personal items, and a wave of silent judgment from every eye around me. The crowd outside had grown. Employees who normally glanced past me, guests walking the plaza, even delivery drivers had stopped to witness what was happening. Phones pointed at me, recording every moment, capturing every tremor in my hands, every flash of my eyes. And then I heard it, a voice, loud, cutting through the murmurs. "This isn't right. He didn't do anything wrong." The officers stiffened. Carlyle appeared at the office window again, this time fully aware that the world was watching. His posture, once rigid and commanding, now faltered. He glanced at the gathering crowd, at the cameras, at the whispers spreading like wildfire. For the first time that day, he looked uncertain. Inside, the HR manager stood silently, flipping through her folder like she had always done, but even she glanced nervously at the growing crowd outside. Authority, it seemed, was no longer absolute. I took a deep breath. The humiliation I had endured, every sneer, every dismissive glance, every public command to leave, was no longer mine alone to bear. The truth had an ally now, witnesses, eyes that saw, cameras that captured, voices that refused to stay silent. And then the PA system crackled. The familiar voice of the building's announcer rang out, clear, commanding, impossible to ignore. "May I have your attention, please?" Every head turned, phones clicked. Whispers faded into silence. My name was about to be called. "James Harris," the voice continued, steady and deliberate, "has worked at Henderson Tech for 15 years. 15 years of dedication, integrity, and quiet labor that has kept this company running every single day. And yet today he was publicly humiliated and fired in front of everyone who witnessed his commitment firsthand." My chest tightened. The words were mine, my truth, broadcast to everyone present. The crowd leaned in, murmurs rising, cameras capturing the moment. The officers, trained to enforce authority without question, hesitated. The CEO's hand gripped the window sill, jaw tight, his confidence slipping away with every passing second. I felt it then, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. The humiliation had not vanished, but the power dynamic had begun to tilt. The authority that had felt absolute, unshakable, and final was now fragile, vulnerable to the witness of a crowd, to the force of truth. Employees began to step forward cautiously, one after another. Apologies, whispers, and murmurs of support reached my ears. Cameras continued to capture every moment, and I realized something profound. 15 years of invisible work, of silent dedication, had led to this pivotal moment of recognition. The CEO's face drained of color. The confidence that had dominated the office, the power that had silenced me, now wavered in the face of public scrutiny. Authority is fragile, I thought, and the crowd, the cameras, the people who refused to look away, they had begun to tip the scales. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the first surge of control I'd experienced all day. My humiliation was no longer the final word. The world was watching, and when injustice is seen, it refuses to stay buried. The announcement ended, leaving a charged silence, and in that silence I understood the reversal had begun. The moment meant to destroy me was now the first step toward something far greater. The lobby was electric, phones clicked, whispers turned to murmurs, and the crowd outside seemed to hold its collective breath. My name had been announced over the PA system, and every eye was on me. For the first time that day, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just the janitor, the expendable worker, the target of humiliation. I was seen. James Harris, the voice repeated, firm and deliberate, has served Henderson Tech for 15 years. Every day he has worked with integrity, diligence, and loyalty. And yet today he was publicly humiliated and fired in front of the very people whose lives he has supported through his quiet work. My heart pounded. The words felt unreal. 15 years of invisible labor, acknowledged, broadcast to a room full of witnesses, recorded on countless phones, shared with a world beyond these walls. The murmurs grew louder, phones raised. People began stepping forward cautiously, offering nods, whispered apologies, gestures of solidarity. The humiliation that had weighed on me all day began to shift. It was no longer mine alone. Then I saw him, Carlyle, the CEO. The man who had orchestrated my public disgrace now appeared, pale, stiff, hands gripping the window frame. His posture, once commanding, faltered under the weight of scrutiny. For the first time all day, he looked small, uncertain, human. I felt a strange warmth, not pride exactly, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the truth had a witness. That injustice, once exposed, could no longer hide. The crowd outside began to react. A few brave colleagues approached, shaking my hand, offering quiet words of respect. I accepted them, absorbing each gesture, each acknowledgement, each recognition of years of overlooked work. Cameras continued to capture it all. The balance of power, once entirely in Carlyle's hands, had shifted irrevocably. A murmur ran through the crowd, growing louder, echoing across the lobby. Employees whispered about fairness, loyalty, and respect. Someone raised their voice, "This isn't right." 15 years of service deserve more than this. The officers who had flanked me since the beginning of the day froze. Their authority, absolute minutes before, was now challenged. The CEO's jaw tightened, his words failing him. The crowd, the cameras, the witnesses, they had stripped him of control. Then the PA system spoke again. "Let this be a lesson. Dignity cannot be erased by authority. Respect cannot be replaced with fear." Those who work tirelessly behind the scenes are the backbone of every organization. The crowd erupted in applause, first tentative, then stronger, louder. My chest swelled with a feeling I hadn't experienced in years: validation, recognition, a restoration of dignity that no authority could take away. Carlyle tried to speak, to assert control, but the words died in his throat. Every eye in the room bore into him. Every camera caught his faltering confidence. Authority, it seemed, was fragile in the face of truth and witness. I straightened, my hands still trembling, but my shoulders held taller than they had all day. 15 years of unseen work had finally been acknowledged. The humiliation that had begun in Carlyle's office was now transforming into something else entirely. empowerment, vindication, and public recognition. And in that moment, I realized the truth I had always known deep down. Courage, even in quiet form, has the power to shift the balance of power. The injustice that had been imposed on me could not stand in the light of witnesses, cameras, and the undeniable force of truth. I stepped out of the plaza, my head high, my chest steady. The humiliation had been endured, the injustice witnessed, and the reversal had begun. Carlyle, the man who had tried to erase me, would never forget it. And neither would I. The applause didn't stop. It rolled through the lobby like a tide, washing over me, filling every corner with a sound I had longed for but never imagined I'd hear: recognition. 15 years of invisible work, public humiliation, and quiet suffering finally met acknowledgement. Carlyle, the CEO, appeared fully in the lobby, flanked by his assistant. His face was pale, his posture rigid, his authority crumbling under the weight of the crowd's witness. The man who had humiliated me, who had believed power alone could erase 15 years of dedication, now looked small, human, exposed. "You," he began, voice shaky, faltering. "You, this is," but the words died in his throat. The cameras captured every falter, the phones recorded his hesitation. The whispers of the crowd were louder than any command he could give. Authority, I realized, is fragile in the face of truth. The HR director, who had handed me my belongings earlier, stepped forward, her expression firm. "Mr. Carlyle," she said, voice steady, "you will submit a full report explaining why you publicly humiliated an employee. The board is demanding accountability." He froze. His power, which had seemed untouchable, was gone. The balance had irrevocably shifted. The crowd's eyes, the cameras, the whispers, all bore witness to his failure, and he could not escape it. I felt my daughter's words echo in my mind. "Daddy, now everyone sees you." Yes, everyone saw me. And everyone saw him not as a powerful CEO, but as a man undone by arrogance and cruelty. Colleagues approached cautiously, offering apologies and words of respect. Cameras continued to capture every handshake, every nod, every moment of solidarity. I accepted them quietly, absorbing the support, feeling the first surge of real power I had experienced all day, the power of truth witnessed and recognized. The PA system spoke again. "Let this serve as a reminder: dignity cannot be erased by authority, respect cannot be replaced with fear. Those who work tirelessly behind the scenes are the backbone of every organization." The applause erupted anew, louder, stronger, unstoppable. And in that roar I felt something profound: justice. Carlyle finally spoke, attempting to regain composure, but the words sounded hollow. His authority, once absolute, was gone. The humiliation he had intended for me had turned back upon him, undeniable and public. I stepped out into the sunlight, my head high, chest steady. The humiliation that had weighed on me all day transformed into a lesson in resilience, courage, and the undeniable force of truth. 15 years of invisible labor had finally been honored, not by quiet acknowledgement, but by the undeniable witness of the world. And as I walked away, I realized the deepest truth of all: power is fleeting, but integrity endures. Humiliation may sting, authority may falter, but the truth, once seen, cannot be erased. I had survived the public shame, I had faced the arrogance of authority, and I had emerged not just intact, but celebrated, acknowledged, and finally truly seen.